October. A time of fear. A time of chills. A time of haunting. A time of Infinity Games pretending to exist for about 2 weeks only to then fade off the map. It's no secret that I'm not great at getting videos out in October. And for a while, I'd kind of considered getting rid of Horror Month on the channel in favour of Metroid Month, because I used to have issues sleeping after prolonged exposure to horror. I'm no longer suffering from that, so I've tripled down on the horror. And ever since 2023, I make several trips to the cinema per month to see horror films in the month of October, catching as many reruns as I can. The thing is, this video is being written 5 days before it's supposed to go out. I've got today and tomorrow really to write this, then record both this video's audio and the video for Halloween itself, in and of itself a revival of a past project. So we're going to do a top 5 for horror films. The only rules really are that it's not remotely objective. It comes down to how I felt about each film. I'll include a couple of honourable mentions, or several honourable mentions, but keep in mind I haven't seen loads of horror films. Specifically, I've barely watched any horror sequels. In fact, I can't really think of any that I've ever seen. So you won't be hearing about Evil Dead 2, Friday the 13th Part 2, Hellraiser 2, Aliens, or Doctor Sleep here. I'm also going to try as best as I can to stick to pure horror. So as much as I enjoy films like Scream or Megan, they're a little bit too comical for this list in particular. There's a half exception to that, but it really depends on your outlook. You'll have to bear with me on footage. I'm not risking copyright after various nonsense I've had to put up with. So I'm just going to try and use game footage here with the odd poster. Hopefully I've got enough horror game B-roll that I don't need to record loads of that. So without further ado, it's time to strap ourselves in for a spooky ride. Do you know how rare it is for a horror film to get any kind of emotional response out of me these days? I'm pretty steady when it comes to horror. I've more or less lost the ability to show fear in the face of this stuff. That's still sort of true here, but there were moments where I was slightly fearful during Hellraiser. See, this is a film centered around the affair of a wife and her husband's brother. This brother had died, but he's resurrected in a partial horrific state where the affair continues. The brother, Frank, had bought this weird puzzle box and solved it only to be brutally murdered. Chains were involved. Nice. I know. Anyway, the wife, Julia, is still obsessed with Frank, and upon discovering his ridiculously gory body, partially resurrected, she aids him in restoring that body. The resurrection happened because of Frank's brother, Julia's husband, Larry's blood dropping onto the attic floor or something. Mental, I know. What follows is that Larry and Julia's daughter winds up coming face to face with Frank and escaping with the puzzle box. She solves it. The monsters, the Cenobites, try to take her. She tells them that she knows of someone that has escaped them. So they agree that she will lead them to Frank and trick Frank into confessing that he escaped them, and they'll take him instead of her. This is a weird film. Larry literally wears his brother's skin after kill. Not Larry, Frank. Sorry, I'm all over the place. The names in this film. Yeah, Frank wears Larry's skin after killing him. The monsters, those Cenobites that I mentioned, they're really interesting. They're extremely masochistic, hence the chains from the beginning. Pinhead's obviously an extremely famous monster in the horror space. He's as iconic as Reagan when she's possessed, Pennywise the dancing clown, and Jason Voorhees. He also has some really good lines in this film. The thing is, the plot didn't stick with me like some other horror plots do, hence the getting the names wrong for a moment. So, it only gets to be number 5, but because of the atmosphere in this film and the practical effects, and the way that those practical effects add to the uncanniness of everything, I think it gets to go on this list, full stop. I will say, as a gore-filled film by virtue of what it is, I do struggle to actually rewatch this one. But man, it is actually brilliant. So good. Definitely give this one a watch. It's important to start this discussion with a question.
What does John Hurt mean to you?
Oh,
See, I'd somehow never seen Alien over the years. I was meant to watch it with my mate, but never got round to it. The only things I knew for certain was that John Hurt had something burst out of him in the way that Stephen Moffat loved to compare to childbirth in his classic sitcom coupling, and that Metroid took heavy inspiration from it to the point that Ridley's named after the creator of Alien, and Samus is heavily inspired by Ellen Ripley. How did I never see this film before last month? It's a pretty simple story. A group on a spaceship land on a rock that has alien life on it. John Hurt gets attacked by alien life. The next thing you know, you have a creature hunting down the crew one by one. The thing is, it's effective. Just like with Hellraiser, the atmosphere is on point. It never outstays its welcome either, which is where a lot of horror that had potential fails. The star of this film is, of course, Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver. And she's on top form here. She takes no shit from anyone, immediately taking command when everyone else is falling apart in one way or another. She's the kind of protagonist that if she were written today, she'd probably lack in nuance. But here, she's just a perfect mix of hard-headed and vulnerable, so that she's constantly a delight to watch. The Xenomorph is pretty fun too. Another case of why I really like practical effects in film rather than just CGI. The other thing I want to shout out is the John Hurt moment. The fake blood used in the scene was not known about by the actors in the scene, so the reaction you saw was a lot more raw. I love moments like that. It's really something that feels lost in modern filmmaking, both raw reactions and practical effects. Metroid fans will get a lot out of this if they recognise various elements that's been reused in those games, so if that's you, or even if it's not, get watching this Halloween. You know how hard it is to do a top 5 when there's about 3 more films at least that I want on this list? Oh well, we'll cover those in honourable mentions. The Evil Dead has to take a spot on this list. It's the breakout hit of Sam Raimi where Bruce Campbell stars as Ash as him, his friends and his girlfriend accidentally unleash evil spirits in a cabin in the woods. I'm not exactly caught up on the Evil Dead lore, having only seen this one, but this film is less the straight zombie film I was expecting and more a demonic attack. Bruce Campbell as Ash is one of those things that people have raved about for years, and I can see why. Even though he's not especially competent in this film, he's consistently charming, and his survival in and of itself justifies bringing him back in any sequels. I felt awful for him when the spirits used his girlfriend's body to torture him, faking her restoration. It's another extremely simple premise, a common theme amongst most of these horror films. It was based on the shorter half-hour film that Raimi and Campbell have made in 1978 called Within the Woods. This also starred Ellen Samwise, who made it into The Evil Dead as well as Ash's sister Cheryl. I don't have a lot else to say about this film. It's decently scary, although, as ever, I didn't really have any response to that. With just enough Raimi humour to alleviate any potential for it to drag a person's mood down. That said, it doesn't alleviate tension. The demons are the ones making the jokes. They're in control at all times. The film ends with Ash being attacked by a demon on his escape that morning, his fate unknown to the viewer. Any fan of Raimi's work should watch this. It's just pure Raimi in every sense of the term. Would you believe that I was able to be scared by a film post-2023? Because that's what happened when I watched The Babadook. The fear was only brief, but this is possibly one of the greatest horror films I've ever seen, as it was able to deliver its scares without overindulging and making it get silly. The moment when the mother, Amelia, is reading the picture book to her son Samuel, and the book gets progressively more insane, is an elite moment. Then when she's reading it on her own later, and we see the stuff she only skimmed past with Samuel and a bunch of blank pages, the fear that is felt is actually something I never expected to feel again. And then there's the moment that the Babadook actually attacks Amelia. It's effective because it doesn't overdo it. It's a shadow that you never truly see. You catch its face for a moment as it drops off the ceiling, but it doesn't outstay its welcome. Instead, the monster, so to speak, is manifested for Amelia herself. She progressively gets more insane as time goes on, losing sleep over the monster and seeing it on the television where it couldn't possibly have been. The TV scene is genuinely a moment where I feel like I've had that exact nightmare as a child. More on nightmares I had as a child tomorrow, and it felt effective at setting up the Babadook's power. Except he has no power. There is no monster. It's Amelia's grief for her husband that drives her to act violently. The Babadook wears his clothing. Samuel can see it too because he's grieving too. Except his eventual choice is to make friends with it. Because the Babadook is his dad. The memory of his dad. Amelia's grief is also manifested through the way the house appears to be poorly maintained, shown via an illusion of an infestation at one point, or the greyness of the house overall. She attacks Samuel because Samuel was born the night that her husband, Oscar, died. He's a permanent reminder of the loss of her loved one. It's a film about overcoming that grief, rather than that grief overcoming you. It's an extremely powerful message, which elevates this from just being a good scarefest to being an excellent film in and of itself. It's a bit difficult to watch at times, but it's truly the scariest film I've ever watched. There's only one horror film that surpasses it, and honestly, I could argue this one being superior in a lot of ways. Honestly, do yourself a favour and watch this one. It's on a fair few free services at the moment, so you won't regret it. So I chose to make this a top 5 rather than top 10 to make it writable in an afternoon. I wasn't after a long video, but I do want to touch on more films than just the ones that fit onto the top 5. Take for example The Exorcist, hailed by many as the scariest film of all time. When I watched it, I enjoyed the compelling story that was the tale of Regan's possession by a demon. Of course, I knew her face at the peak of her possession going in from my day of playing the Scary Maze game. I was not, however, afraid. It's hard to get me to fear demons. I'm too into fantasy.
I'm the thing that monsters have nightmares about.
Then we have to look at the first Friday the 13th film. A lot of people don't really like this one, but I adore it. It's legitimately one of the only slashers I actually like. I've not seen any of the sequels. They're on the list. Maybe one day this week I'll have a horror night and watch some more horror films. It's a really good bait and switch when you expect from the franchise's reputation for Jason to be the killer, only for it to turn out to have been his mother either vaguely possessed or suffering from serious mental health problems. A film I really wanted to talk about but couldn't fit on the list really is Companion. It's more a thriller than horror, but I really enjoyed it. It's at its best when you know nothing going in, as I didn't when I didn't even know that I'd sat down to watch Companion at the time due to it being a secret screening at Cineworld. Suffice to say that the big twist of the film made it a horror that tops its contemporaries. And where would we be without the king of horror himself, Stephen King? I can tell you that one film made it onto this list properly, but I wanted to give special mentions to It, both the 90s and 2010s versions, The Shining, The Monkey, and Salem's Lot. The Monkey's clearly the weakest of the bunch, but I still really enjoyed it. Another couple of films I really like are the first couple of Paranormal Activity films. Absolutely amazing viewing at first, even if they started to seriously overindulge as the films went on with deep dives into their lore taking shit way too far. They also caused an overindulgence in found footage films. And that brings me to the found footage film, The Blair Witch Project. To this day I've not focused properly on it. I tried to watch it last year, but it didn't go well. But it's allegedly a masterclass in horror, and what I did pay attention to I really liked. The promotion for it was also excellent, and its reputation precedes it. Then we've got The Conjuring. Not a lot to say about this one. It was excellent, but I didn't get the fear everyone I'd spoken to told me they felt. I may at some point watch a couple of its sequels at least. Who knows? The thing is, horror touches on a core part of the human experience that I think you kind of wish away until you don't feel it anymore. Fear. Lacking in fear, you're lacking in a kind of thrill that I think these films can provide. That's why I started hunting down a film that I could truly fear. The Babadook's as close as I could get, with weapons only momentarily getting me before my focus pivoted to figuring out its central mystery and how the villain's power actually worked. Digging around during the writing process of this video has me hearing that Sinister is the scariest film of all time, making it a potential film for the next couple of days for me. With that in mind, I think it's time we hit my favourite horror film of all time. Because it's something. I told you a Stephen King film made it to the real list. Carrie is the story of a young girl abused by her heavily religious mother and bullied by all of her peers. When she discovers she has telekinetic powers, she uses them to take back control in her life. Meanwhile, one of the girls that has always teased Carrie asks her boyfriend to take Carrie to the prom as a way of making amends for her actions. However, upon discovering Carrie trying to integrate herself into the school's social circles, another girl and her boyfriend decide to humiliate Carrie once and for all. It's the last mistake they ever make. When Carrie started, I was immediately greeted by a locker room scene and shocked by Carrie's period. Now, I'm not sure what I expected from this film. That wasn't it though. She freaks out, she gets ridiculed, a teacher looks after her and sends her home. Mind you, this was school in the 1970s, it's nothing like the kind of teachers I had growing up. They're still quite hard on Carrie, telling her to get a hold of herself. We're greeted by Carrie's mother, Margaret, shortly after, who had been alluded to as someone nobody liked dealing with. She verbally berates Carrie for becoming a woman, with Carrie begging to know why her mother had never warned her about this. This is a thing in some religious sects, where they take this whole thing of women bleeding over the original sin of something. It's not something any self-respecting religion claims, because it's a ridiculous premise. But we all know there are some crazy religious whack jobs out there. What follows is Carrie accidentally discovering her powers and trying to learn to control them. She's able to eventually, with it being clear that she is extremely powerful. Sue and her boyfriend Tommy obviously agree that Tommy will take Carrie to the prom, and Chris and Billy, the obligatory Stephen King bullies of the story, slaughter pigs for blood to pour on Carrie to get revenge for Chris being banned from the prom. Carrie doesn't trust being asked to prom, but eventually agrees. Margaret, of course, forbids it, but Carrie finally shows her powers, getting denounced by Margaret as a witch. She tells her mother that she's going. It seems like a victory. In fact, you'd think the situation going on would be that discovery that Sue sent Tommy to ask Carrie, like any other film would go. But no, Carrie is voted prom queen, in large part due to Chris's machinations, and is immediately drenched in the pig's blood that had been hung over where she'd stand. Tommy is enraged, but the bucket drops on him, killing him. This is when Carrie goes insane and slaughters everyone. Sue, having not gone to prom and gotten kicked out when she tried to warn Carrie or the teachers about the bucket, is the sole survivor of the school. Heavily traumatised, of course, Carrie briefly survives it, as the school burns while she walks away. But her mother seeks to kill her to save her. Carrie breaks down to her mother about how she was right about everything. In the end, both Carrie and Margaret are killed. Carrie stabbed in the back by Margaret, and Carrie using her power to stab Margaret multiple times in a way that resembles a religious figure seen earlier in the film, known as Saint Sebastian. This is thematically relevant to the film, as it suits the way Margaret views herself, as some kind of martyr. Everything about this film is perfect. Sissy Spacek is the perfect Carrie, bringing both the vulnerability and the necessary amount of unhingedness to properly illustrate the character. Piper Laurie as Margaret is absolutely fantastic. I was going to say fanatic. She is that too. The way she spouts her religious doctrine is truly special. And she sounds like all the stereotypes rolled into one. You know, she's got the southern thing going, she's got the whole sound like she's in a daze as she speaks. She's truly the best actor in that film, rivaled only by Spacek herself. There's not much more that can be said about the film. The massacre at the school gym is an iconic scene in horror, with Spacek's facial acting being a constant highlight. The ending with Sue having a nightmare of Carrie grabbing her from beneath her grave was a good scare, in fact kind of the only scare. It's just a borderline perfect film. I cannot believe they're doing this story again, but as a mini-series. Well, that's that then. If you want more scares from the channel, check out my Silent Hill 2 playthrough where the scariest thing is the frame rate. Or check out some of my older Horror Month videos. The plan is for tomorrow to have a slightly bigger project, though still comparable in length to this video. Hope everyone enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time. Happy Halloween.